7 million years ago, in the forests of Central Africa, a creature took a step that would change the fate of the planet. It wasn't a big step, it wasn't dramatic, no one was watching, but that single act, standing up and walking on two legs instead of four, set our ancestors on a path no other ape would ever follow. This is the story of why humans stood up and never sat back down. To understand why our ancestors stood upright, we have to go back further than the first footprint, to the world that forced the change. Around 10 million years ago, Africa was mostly thick, unbroken rainforest. Our ancestors lived like other great apes, in the trees, moving on all fours along branches, rarely touching the ground, but the climate was shifting. Slowly, the vast forest began to break apart. Rainfall decreased. Grasslands and open woodlands spread where dense canopy once ruled. This was not a sudden catastrophe, it was a slow squeeze, one that would push a small population of apes into a very different kind of life. Imagine a forest thinning out. The trees you depend on for food and safety are now farther apart. The gaps between them are growing. For a knuckle-walking ape, this is a serious problem. Every time you cross open ground, you're exposed. Predators can see you. You're slower, clumsier, more vulnerable than you'd ever be up in the branches. Some populations of ancient apes stayed in the shrinking forests, competing for less and less space. But others faced a different pressure. The need to cross these open spaces to reach new patches of trees, new food, new territory. And here's where something remarkable happened. The individuals who could cross that open ground more efficiently, who could travel farther without exhausting themselves, had an advantage. Standing upright, even if only sometimes, may have started as a temporary solution to a very specific problem, getting from one tree to the next safely and efficiently. The fossil evidence for this transition is fragile, scattered, and hard-won, but it tells a compelling story. Consider Sahelanthropus chadensis, discovered in Chad and dated to nearly 7 million years ago. Its skull shows a telltale sign. The opening where the spinal cord connects to the brain, the foramen magnum, sits more toward the underside of the skull, not the back. That single detail matters enormously. In four-legged animals, this opening faces backward because the head hangs forward off a horizontal spine. In upright walkers, it shifts downward because the head balances atop a vertical spine. This suggests that even 7 million years ago, almost at the very root of the human family tree, something was already experimenting with standing upright. Millions of years later, Ardipithecus remidus, nicknamed Ardi, shows us a creature caught between two worlds. Her feet still had a grasping big toe, perfect for climbing, but her pelvis had already begun reshaping itself for upright walking. Ardi wasn't fully committed to the ground. She was hedging her bets, one foot in the trees, one testing the earth. Then, around 3.2 million years ago, we meet the most famous ancestor of them all, Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. Lucy's skeleton tells us the transition was no longer experimental. Her knees angled inward beneath her hips, a structural feature that lets modern humans balance our weight over a single leg with each stride. Her pelvis was short and bowl-shaped, anchoring powerful muscles for upright movement. Her spine curved in the same S shape ours does today, absorbing the shock of each step. Lucy still had some climbing adaptations. She wasn't sprinting marathons, but she was unmistakably a walker. And in 1978, at a place called Laetoli in Tanzania. So why did this happen? Scientists have proposed several powerful theories, and the truth may be a combination of all of them. The Savanna Hypothesis suggests that as forests gave way to grassland, standing upright let our ancestors see over tall grass, spotting predators and prey alike the way a meerkat rises on its hind legs to survey its surroundings. The energy efficiency hypothesis points to something more subtle. Walking on two legs burns significantly less energy than knuckle walking like a chimpanzee. Over long distances, foraging across a changing landscape, this efficiency could mean the difference between finding enough food and starving. The thermoregulation hypothesis suggests standing upright exposed less of the body to direct overhead sun, while catching more cooling breeze, critical for a creature moving through hot, open landscapes at midday. And the provisioning hypothesis offers something more social, that freeing the hands allowed our ancestors to carry food, tools, and even infants, enabling new forms of cooperation, sharing, and family structure. None of these theories fully explains it alone, but together they paint a picture, a species under pressure and upright, walking as the versatile solution that solved many problems at once. But walking upright didn't come free. The human spine, originally built for a four-legged frame, now had to support the body's full weight vertically. A design compromise that gives us, to this day, some of the most common back pain in the animal kingdom. Childbirth became more dangerous too. As the pelvis narrowed to support upright walking and as human brains grew larger over the following millions of years, birth became a tighter, more painful passage than in almost any other primate. Standing upright was not a perfect design. It was an imperfect solution, but one so useful that evolution kept refining it generation after generation for millions of years. And here is where the story turns from survival to transformation. Once the hands were no longer needed for walking, they were free to do something else entirely. Free hands could grip a stone and shape it into a cutting edge. Free hands could carry meat back to a shared camp. Free hands could hold a sleeping infant, gesture a warning, point toward danger, or begin, however crudely, to make and share tools with another member of the group. Standing upright didn't just change how our ancestors moved, it rewired what was possible for the species entirely. Toolmaking, cooperative hunting, complex social bonds, and eventually language itself, all of it may trace back to that first wobbling decision to stand. 7 million years separate us from that first ancestor who stood upright in an African forest. They didn't know they were making history. They were simply trying to survive, to cross a gap between trees, to save energy, to see over the grass, to carry food back to family. But in solving that immediate problem, they set in motion everything that would follow. Stone tools, fire, art, cities, language, and everything we call civilization. Every step you take today, walking to your car, climbing the stairs, carrying your children in your arms, is an echo of that first upright stride taken millions of years ago by a creature who never knew what it had begun.